When Dick asked me to do this, I was reluctant because I'm used to interviewing and writing about other people, but not speaking about myself. In fact, I've never talked in public about my own life, but I thank Dick because I already have been rewarded by having good memories that I hadn't thought about in years. I'm going to go through my amazing adventures at Penn State year by year from 1962 to 1969, first as an undergraduate and then as an employee at the university. My memories may remind you of similar memories that you have, or they may be completely different. Either way, I would like to hear about them too, but I would appreciate it if you would save your comments and questions for the end. And also, I'd appreciate it if you would silence your electronic devices now. I began at Penn State in 1962 as a math major at Ogon's campus in Abington, the suburbs of my hometown, Philly. Early in my first semester, I saw a promotion in the student newspaper, the Ogon's Campus News, inviting students who were interested in journalism to come and meet the editor. I was encouraged by one of my English professors, Mike Mills, who was also the Campus News advisor. While I'm on the subject of Penn State's faculty, I want to praise and thank professors at University Park who inspired me, including the director of the English department's writing option, Leonard Rubenstein, poets John Haig and Deborah Austin, and novelist John Barth, who wrote on one of my papers, "You seem to have some talent. Sorry you weren't able to get the work in on schedule." The fact was, I failed to get most of my assignments in on schedule. Later you'll hear what I was doing instead of doing my classwork. Getting back to Ogon's, I went to the campus news office, and as fate would have it, the editor was not there. But as serendipity would have it, I met someone I had not gone to see, who was there, and she changed my life. Her name was Antonia Marie Mullen. Her name now is Antonia Marie Rosenbaum.
Right here.
Tony and I spent a lot of time together at Ogon's, but there was just one hitch. When Tony was in elementary school, she skipped a grade, and that followed all the way through to Ogon's, so she was a year ahead of me at Ogon's. So that meant in 1963, she went off to University Park, and I stayed at Ogon's, where by the time I had become the editor of the Ogon's Campus News. Tony and I made a lot of trips between State College and Philly that year, back and forth over the rural two-lane 28th Division Highway, also known as Route 322. When I finally moved to University of Park, I officially changed my major to English composition. But in reality, my major became extracurricular activities. The Daily Collegian even published a profile of me that says, "He has a list of organizations as long as your arm." But the headline on the profile said, "Fashion Activist Rosenbaum." It went on to say that I had just purchased a 3-piece herringbone ensemble. I'll say more about my wardrobe later on. Some of my extracurriculars were political. Town Independent Men Council, undergraduate student government, the ad hoc committee for student freedom, but most of my curriculars were in the media. 2 of them were Critique, the literary journal. Another was Prof, Penn State's humor magazine. Since its founding in 1909, Frost's mission had been to let mirth prevail. But in 1962, there was too much mirth, and Frost was banned from the campus. Without going into the sordid details, the most serious accusations were that Frost contained material that was, quote, obscene and or salacious. And the image of Frost, created over a period of years, would be difficult to change. But of course, they said, there always would be a place for a, quote, responsible humor magazine at the Pennsylvania State University. So almost immediately, about 24 Frost alumni expressed interest in reviving Frost. They included prominent people in journalism, advertising, and publishing. To cut to the chase, it took 3 years of negotiations for a group of Frost alumni, lawyers, and administrators at Penn State to agree on a new university charter for Prof. A group of students was selected for editorial and managerial positions, and I was named Frost's production manager, which meant I basically would be laying out the magazine. May 19th, 1965, one day before my 21st birthday, Frost was reborn in a 64-page full-color issue that cost 50 cents. With each copy, the purchaser received a modest token of our appreciation. Right now, Tony is going to hand out the remaining originals that I saved for 61 years just for this luncheon. Protect them, they're priceless originals, not copies. You can read the May 1965 issue of Prof and all of Prof issues for free now online at the Penn State Frost Collection on the University Special Collection Library. Over the years, Prof had been the target of complaints, and as you know, was banned for 3 years, but it had never been sued until 1966. Here's what happened. There was a feature called Prof Photos, that's F-O-T-O-S. It consisted of montages of recognizable movie stars and ordinary people constructed from cast-off photos in local newspaper dead files. From our point of view, the montages were obvious and harmless parodies. But someone recognized a family member and not only complained, but also sued Frost for invasion of privacy. Not a lot of people know this. The case was kept secret, even from Frost's staff. There was no reporting in the Collegian, nor anywhere else. I found out about it only after I had retired from the university. It appears that the principals settled quickly and kept the suit hushed up to avoid embarrassment. Case closed. Another one of my media extracurriculars was at radio station WDFM. It had been licensed in 1954 specifically to give students the opportunity to learn electronic broadcasting. I had programs on WDFM with my roommate, Dave Tanner, not because either of us were planning on going to work in radio, but it was just something for fun that we could do together for fun. He called himself Lance McPherson and I was Lincoln Float. I did learn a practical skill at WDFM. At the time, I did not realize it would eventually become a benefit. How to edit recordings on 1/4-inch wide audio tape using marking pens, scissors, and splicing tape. It was a primitive editing system, but it worked. Now, in 1966, my senior year, my biggest worry was not about being banned or getting sued. It was finding the answer to the question, where can I get a job after graduation? Right? I wanted to get a head start looking. My search began close to home at University Press, where one of my friends, who happened to be an editor at the Collegian, had gotten a job soon after graduating the previous year. My second step in my job search was to call Prof alumnus Sam Vaughn, who was president, publisher, and editor-in-chief at Doubleday in New York City. I had met Sam during the negotiations for Prof's reinstatement. I identified with Sam because he was from Philly, and at Penn State he, quote, majored in putting out undergraduate magazines, as he told me. He also said, if you ever need a job, give me a call. So I gave him a call. He immediately invited me to a weekly happy hour of Prof alumni in, I think it was the lounge of the Ritz-Carlton at Central Park, but wherever it was, I fit right in because I was wearing my new three-piece herringbone ensemble. After a bit of reminiscing and joking, Sam got right to the point. John is here for a job. It turned out that Davis Publishing Company had an opening, and they only wanted to know one thing from me. Can you work for a woman? They actually asked me that question. I never found out why. Because about a week later, I got an unexpected phone call from someone I did not know. He claimed he was the director of Penn State's Division of Continuing Education. And he was calling me because I had applied for an open position at WPSX TV. I replied to him, you must have the wrong guy. I have not applied for a position at WPSX TV. And he said, but you did apply for a job at University Press. And I said, well, yes, I did. And he said, well, we share applications. And I saw that you are organized and you are a manager with management experience. I thought, who, me? I only thought he could have gotten that impression from the traditional extracurriculars that I had listed in my application. Undergraduate student government, WDFN production staff, production manager of a magazine. I also thought he took it for granted that I had graduated. He said, that doesn't matter. You'll have time to finish your classes while working. Now, at that point, he must have been reading my mind because I'm thinking, oh, this is a part-time job that's temporary. He assured me, without my asking, it's a budgeted full-time job with full university benefits. Hearing that prompted my immediate response. I definitely want to talk to you. Anytime, except Monday, Wednesday, or Friday mornings when I have classes. I could not believe what he said next. How about tomorrow? I could not believe it. I was really at a loss. What was this job about, and why so urgent? He wanted to meet the next day, a Saturday. The caller assured me all my questions would be answered when we met. Now, to understand the urgency and of the job and the nature of the job, keep in mind the status of WPSX TV in 1966, less than 1 year after going on air. It was an independent educational television station like 100 others in the country. Even though programs were broadcast under the logo of such as NET, National Television Network, stations were not interconnected. Programs were produced on film or videotape at individual stations and then bike cycled from station to station by bus, train, sometimes plane. Therefore, expeditious mail rooms were crucial. It would be horrors to promote a program and not be able to run it because it hadn't arrived yet. Well, in February 1966, WPSX-TV had a crisis when their mailroom man quit with virtually no notice. I'll always remember his name. It was really Ron Shipman. That was the position I was being offered. John Shipman, the one-man mailroom, my first job in television. The person who made the call to me was Marlo Froke, to whom I will always remain indebted. When I told Tony about Marlo's offer, we did not have to think twice about it. First, and most important, we knew that our parents would be thrilled that I had gotten a full-time job with benefits in a safe place. By that they meant not New York City. In addition, Tony and I could remain in Happy Valley. We could go to the First with friends. We could have cookout dinners on the beach at Whipple's, weather permitting. Another perk was, as a full-time employee, I could go for my master's tuition free. As the spouse of a full-time employee, Tony could go for her master's at 1/4 of the tuition.
Wow.
Now, for your information, Tony did complete her master's at Penn State, but I dropped out after one course because I was learning so much at WPSX-TV. Marlo had told me in the interview that my job in the mailroom was not going to take all day, but so I would have time for opportunities that I could work my way up. So I volunteered writing promos in the public relations department, in the studio in the control room, learning how to run cameras, the video switcher, the audio boards. It was like a crash course in television production. About 6 months into the job, I was surprised when Marlo asked me to direct and edit a television program that he would write and host. The hitch was that that program would be shown one time to about a dozen people in our studio. No one else would ever see it, right? At first, it did not seem to me to be worth the effort, but I came to realize it was one of the most important programs I ever worked on. Here's why. At that time, stations like WPSX-TV were called pejoratively educational television or instructional television. At first, we were on air only during the day to schools. A national commission was formed to envision public television that would go beyond educational and instructional television, as well as to make the case for interconnecting them. Commission members visited more than 90 educational TV stations in 35 states, including WPSX-TV, where they saw our video describing our cultural, informational, and experimental productions that went beyond regular instructional television. That commission laid the early foundation for the Public Broadcasting Act and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or CPB, in 1967. At this point, I'm compelled to interrupt my regular, unbiased reporting to editorialize about what's going on nationally to public television and locally to Penn State media. Last July, Congress cut more than $1 billion from CPB. This month, CPB's board of directors shut it down completely. Following the trend, last September, Penn State's Board of Trustees rang the death knell for WPSU. 1 month later, after they received more than 1,300 requests to reverse this decision, the board did approve an investment in cooperation with WHYY in Philadelphia that should keep WPSU alive at least until June. Here's hoping that support for public media in Pennsylvania and nationwide will grow, CPB will be resurrected, and WPSU will be put on solid ground financially. I want to go back to the fall of 1966. There were happier times. At least I was happy when I did not have to return to the mailroom. All my volunteering and learning paid off, and I was promoted to the production staff on broadcasts like Farm, Home and Garden, Pennsylvania Magazine, but my favorite was WPSX TV's most popular live program, TV Quarterbacks. It was the setting for first-year coach Joe Paterno to go into our studio each week to review the game, win or lose. The week of a loss, I was running the soundboard. When I went into the studio to mic up Coach Paterno, I did not see him at first. Then I saw he was walking back and forth in the studio, back and forth. You know how he used to walk on the sidelines at games? That's what it was like. He's walking back and forth. I walked up to him, and he seemed to be deep in deep thought. And I said, "Time to mic up, Coach." And he looked up at me like I'd broken his concentration. And he said, "I'm just thinking." There's a quote from Tennyson that expresses exactly how I feel. I was taken back. What coach suffers a loss and is reminded of a line of poetry? Well, Joe Paterno did. May he rest in peace, where the angels will treat him more kindly than the Penn State Board of Trustees did. My job in 1967 changed dramatically when WPSX TV got into radio and began producing a series of 200 promos that were aired on commercial stations. The objective was to link up business and industries with researchers at Penn State. I applied for the job of audio editor and got the job for one reason. I was the only applicant who had done hands-on editing of recordings on quarter-inch audio tape like I had done at WDFM, right? My extracurricular skill paid off. But I only had the job for less than a year because I was, again, in the right place at the right time. In August 1967, one of our producers, directors, quit abruptly, and Marlo offered me the position. It included producing and directing science series for adults, a music series for secondary students, as well as directing an art series for children. All of them were behind schedule and over budget. But within 1 year, we caught up with both. Also, in 1969, one of the programs in the art series won a prestigious national award from the Institute for Education by Radio and Television. The award noted production and direction of high quality. To conclude, at Penn State, I received an extraordinary education and a solid foundation for a rewarding career. But the most important thing, and the reason Penn State is deep in my heart, is because that's where our family began. This is a replica of a paver in Legacy Plaza outside Beaver Stadium, and it says, "We are Tony and John, Jenny and Aaron. We are Penn State." Cheer along with us. We are
Penn State.
We are
Penn State.
We are
Penn State.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.